Okay, today we're talking about mistakes on Pesach, which is to say, the very common question comes up on Pesach. I cooked all my food, and I realized that my ketchup or my whatever it is or something I was using was not kosher Pesach. They put this wrong food into their Pesach food. So we know that there's a lot of chumras about chametz. The most well-known or the most important one for our purposes is that chametz is also b'mashu, which means is that if chametz gets mixed into other food on Pesach, even the tiniest amount, it's not batal. It doesn't make a difference how it happens. No matter how little chametz it was, there's no bittul. So if somebody puts some benefiber into their food, they want to get some extra fiber, benefiber is just plain old chametz, you sprinkle a little into your food on Pesach, and that food is also, it doesn't make a difference how little benefiber there was. Usually when there's isser mixed into food, then it could be batal under all kinds of conditions, but on Pesach, no such thing. You're mixing some benefiber, the food is all awesome. Not only that, an extension of that chametz also b'mashu is that we're not allowed to do hagala on Pesach. That has to do with the fact that when we do hagala, we draw the bli out of the kli. It goes into the water. That water now seemingly should become treif. The only reason why it doesn't become treif is because the bli is ein b'nyomer, or it's part of shishim. Those are variations of the same thing. And therefore, what's going to happen is when the bli comes out into the water, if it would happen before Pesach, it's not a problem. The water is not treif because it's ein b'nyomer and because it's bottle. But if that would happen on Pesach, the water is considered to be chametzik. The water is chametzik, then you just cook, your pot is now just sitting and cooking with chametzik water, and so that's why you can't do hagala on Pesach either. Okay, it's related to the isumash. Okay, those two things are related. So if you
so Liban should be allowed.
You are allowed to leave on Pesach. Yeah,
Liban kal.
That's a question of Prim Gadol. Prim Gadol says that if you do Liban kal, then there are those. He says the Liban kal draws out the blia rather than incinerating the blia. So he says efsher that you should follow those kind of rules also. He's not sure what to say about that. He's not talking about this part of it, but he's talking about a different part. He says efsher that we should have those chumras also.
Okay, and self-cleaning oven.
If you consider that to be Liban Gomer, then Liban Gomer incinerates the blia, then it's not a problem. Right, not for today's discussion. Okay, so but you can't do hagala. You can't do hagala on Pesach. So that's an extension. So not only did the benefiber trafe up your pot of soup, but it also means that you can't kash your pot of soup. Okay, so that means at first glance, once you hear that, you say is if somebody used something on Pesach that they weren't supposed to, then they're finished. They took something that they know needs hashgacha for Pesach, and they used it in their food. They made whatever they cooked or they made out of it. You should say if they did on Pesach, they're finished. The whole thing it's also no matter what.
Can I ask a question? Go back to hagala.
Sure.
Let's say you dump your trefa pot into a huge vat, which has 1,000 times. Will it be fine?
On Pesach?
Yeah.
No.
There is a site for mashu, right? 2,000.
A seif to mashu is not anything that you'll ever come across. Seif to mashu,
like a commercial site.
No, seif to mashu means is that if a guy drops a sandwich in Milwaukee into Lake Michigan in Milwaukee, we can still drink water in Chicago because the chametz that's covered in Milwaukee doesn't bother us that we're drinking that same water in Chicago.
If that happened in Chicago, that would be fine.
No, that would be okay in Chicago also. What I'm saying is that we don't have to worry about. We don't have to think about that. Somebody.
In a commercial site.
You're not going to get to that point. You're not going to get to that point that you do. No, you can't do it. Okay. So.
Am I able to avoid the film? Yeah.
Okay. So at first glance that tells us since a short recap.
I turned to get the screen then. Okay, fine.
So since we have all this Chomer Pesach, a Chomer that Chomer is b'mashu, because of that, we're going to end. It seemingly we would guess is that we will end up with a situation where anything that needs hashgacha for Pesach, if they use it by mistake, should make everything treif. Okay, that would be use it on Pesach. To use something that we tell people needs hashgacha. We tell them needs special hashgacha for Pesach, and they use that thing on Pesach. Seemingly, that should make it. Everything should be awesome.
He's setting up a straw man.
Oh, yeah.
That's correct. I'm going to talk about all these things. So the question, I said at first, the person's question is, they said, the seriously told me that I need to buy this and this product with hashgacha. By mistake, I used the wrong one on Pesach, and now I'm stuck. I cooked my food today on Chol Hamoed, on Yom Tov. I cooked my food. What's the status of my food? So first they said, oh my gosh, that's chametz. So let's talk about whether that's really true. Okay, so I want to give you first some numbers, okay? In the seriously shopping guide, okay, if we break it down, I think there are 352 pieces of information on the shopping guide, okay? Okay, you could look at my spreadsheet afterwards to figure out how I came up with that number. Okay, of those 116 of those things that are listed on, they don't need hashgacha. So obviously, if it doesn't need hashgacha for Pesach, if you use it on Pesach, then you're okay. I mean, you're allowed to use it without hashgacha for Pesach. Okay, but the rest, about half of the rest, or a little more than half of the rest, need hashgacha. Some of them are not allowed. We say, March, you cannot use it. I think there's an X next to it. And some of them have special things, like it says it depends on the ingredients. If we see over here, it's not so clear what it means, what the information says. Okay, so we're talking about the last group, these last three things over here, which is these things that we tell you need to have hashgacha on Pesach, and it told you need to have hashgacha or something like that, or you're not even allowed to use it. What happens if I used it now? What would be the din of that thing? Okay, so the first thing is, as was someone just mentioned a second ago, is this chumrah of chametz being asur b'mashu only applies when it happens on Pesach. Okay, it something happens before Pesach. Okay, we've already gotten plenty of those questions already. Something happened before Pesach. Somebody cooked this and this and this in their pot, and they're cooking for Pesach, and they realize they made a mistake. So what's the din? So then we follow the regular rules a bit. Okay, even on erev Pesach, we paskin. Even on erev Pesach, chametz is based on b'shishim. Okay, but the regular rules a bit will apply until Pesach comes. All the regular rules a bit will apply.
Even after the says
Correct.
It's not close.
Right, except it's a very special case of yavish b'yavish, a very special case where it doesn't apply, but give it. In almost every single case, we follow the regular rules a bit all the way up to Pesach. Mounting up till you go to Shul.
Would be a problem before. A little bit Pesach and a week before.
No, that makes a difference. No. Yavish is not this. It's an unusual case. It's not so common that we should have a yavish case. It's not such a common case yet. But in almost every case, we follow the regular rules. Now, because of that, that doesn't only mean if the cooking in your house is done before Pesach, but it means it's also in where the chametz was bought before Pesach, before it got to your house. Okay, for example, we tell people that ground spices need to have hashgacha for Pesach, because we have this concern that the people who grind spices are also grinding breadcrumbs. Okay, so if the person is grinding breadcrumbs, maybe there are breadcrumbs mixed into my spices. Now, so we say, no one wants breadcrumbs on Pesach, so get spices with hashgacha. Okay, but now, what happens if on Pesach I took some of the garlic out of my pantry that did not have hashgacha for Pesach, and I poured it into my food? So the chametz, the potential that there is some breadcrumbs mixed into there, that happened before Pesach. That I had to put the garlic in on Pesach, but the chametz was bought before Pesach. Okay, that in almost every case, not every case of spices, but in most cases of spices, that's not a case of yavish. We treat it as which is lach b'kemach. In most cases, that's what it is. So there, even though I use it on Pesach, even though my question is I put the garlic in on Pesach, but the chametz that would have been put into there would have been put in before Pesach. The chametz was put in the factory. So the chametz that was put in the factory, that bit will happen before Pesach. So the garlic that I don't want to use that garlic because maybe there's breadcrumbs in there. So I want to be more careful for Pesach. That's fine. But as far as what happened when to my food is, the bit will happen before Pesach, even though my question came up on Pesach.
So what if you buy it on Pesach?
Doesn't make a difference because the bit will happen before Pesach. It doesn't have to be Yisrael. No, it has to be just a mixture that happens. It can't be like in process, But we never get things, except some very, very unusual things that get fresh. We never get stuff that was made on Pesach. That's how we get it.
Grinder, those are whole spices. That's definitely not true.
If you have a grinder, a grinder in your house. Yo, but if you use your grinder, you couldn't ruin it if you ground breadcrumbs and then you bread it, or you may not get a kemach b'kemach. All the bits can happen on Pesach. Or if you ground it on Pesach, you can have that
before Pesach.
Once you grind it, depending on how finely you grind it, it could either be kemach b'kemach, which would be lach. That's why I use garlic powder as an example. Or if you don't grind it so finely, then it could be bigger pieces.
So that could be a problem.
It depends.
Oregano is also kemach b'kemach.
The way you usually get it, no, it's chunkier pieces. So it really doesn't depend on the regular. It depends on the breadcrumbs. Right. What would be how fine would those breadcrumbs would they be? If you were to spread it on the table, could you separate one from the other and get them as individual items? Oregano here and breadcrumbs over here. I don't mean you physically. There's a zillion pieces to check you, but if they would separate as individual pieces as opposed to kemach, when you pour it on the table, you can't get grains separated from each other. They're just one big.
Yavish is in the same category basically as lach.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Okay.
So when you say with 41 items that are not allowed. Could that include items which up to the has chametz that's bottle and it could be allowed?
So when I say not allowed, often they say, there's no way you can eat this food. There's no way you can eat it. When we say need hashgacha, like spices, you can eat spices in Pesach, you need to have hashgacha in Pesach. When I say not allowed, like...
The garlic, any bread that's in the garlic is bottle.
I said, we say it needs hashgacha because we think people want to be more careful, so we're saying it needs hashgacha. But I'm saying, it turns out that if you think about it for real, now I already put the garlic into my food, what's the deal with the garlic really? So we told you the ground spices need hashgacha. But what we're finding out is it wasn't as serious as you might have thought it could be. So now that I use it on Pesach, the food is okay. Then I have to think about it. I have to go back and say, well, why did this list say that it needs hashgacha in the first place? And that's what we're going to go through. Okay, next. Another one of the simpler ways to make things mutter is that even though chametz is also b'mashu, that doesn't apply to kidneys. Okay, kidneys is about the baroid, and it's about the baroid even on Pesach. Okay, so if somebody goes and made a dish for Pesach, and they discovered the world, they figured out, I finally had something new to eat, and they bought string beans. Okay, it's happened more than once. People are so excited they found a new food they could eat on Pesach, they bought string beans, and then they found out, or they realized that string beans were kidneys. Okay, but people have done that. Okay, they go to the store and they. Green beans, same thing. The green beans. Okay, they found out that they went, for whatever reason. It tends to be that they sent the husband to the fruit store, and he came back with so excited that he finally had something that people want to eat, and then they cooked with it. Okay, so what's the din? They put the string beans and they made a whole dish out with the string beans in it. So the din is take the string beans out because that kidneys you can't eat them, but the rest of the food is mutter. Okay, kidneys is butter broil. Okay, and that happens even if it happened on Pesach. Okay, or maybe more common is somebody used their vegetable oil from year round. Instead of using the Pesach oil, use the chametz oil, so to speak, the not Pesach oil. Okay, so let's say the worst case scenario, they use soybean oil. Okay, they use corn oil. Okay, so what's it in? They use it, they cooked it in the food, so you can't get the oil out anymore, but it's about the baroid. Okay, so that's even if they did it on Pesach. The bit Issa Mashu is only for chametz, no Issa Mashu for kidneys, so that's an easier case. Or a person, we tell people dried fruit and parchment paper need hashgacha because there's a coating on them. Okay, there's no way that anyone can imagine that coating being chametz. It's kidneys. It could be kidneys. It's hard. You can't dream of how it could possibly be chametz. So if the person used parchment paper, even if they did it on Pesach and they used it, they cooked their food on it. So we say, well, what could be the worst case scenario? Is that it was kidneys? Okay, that would be butter bread. So it would be butter.
Well, let's say it's corn syrup.
Let's say corn syrup. I didn't say corn syrup. Okay, corn syrup. Well, I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to mention that case, but it's a little more complicated because that has an enzyme in it that potentially has potentials for chametz being in it.
Let's ignore that.
Just the
corn syrup is sweetener, so that's a legal time.
Right. So the din is that's not correct. Chametz in corn syrup for sure could be batel baroid. Batel baroid means that means if it's 40% of the food, it's going to be batel. 40% of course gives taste. 40% of the food of course gives taste. There is a shaila about things that are specifically avida l'taima, not corn syrup. No. Sweeteners are not avida l'taima. Sweeteners are just foods. They're just sweet. So sweeteners are for sure batel. That means if there's 40% corn syrup and 60% something else, 40% anything you're going to taste in the food. Come on, always you're going to taste it. It's batel. There's a special shaila about what happens if you use mustard seed. I mean, something that's avida l'taima. Could that be? But does the rules of bitul baroiv apply in that case? Bitul baroiv apply in that case also. Okay, special shaila.
Yeah, what's it called?
That's the reason you make it.
What is avida l'taima?
Right. That's a reason to. No. Time out. You're explaining the reason why you should be makel, and we spoke about it once before. We can't do it now. Okay, but you could believe me on the case of the corn syrup for sure. It's for sure mutter. That's a regular case. It's a baroiv. Okay. The case.
Maybe the case of the baroiv where it's not you can't taste it.
40% of the food. What are you talking about? What does that mean? If it's 40% of the food, how can
you can't. You identify
every food has.
How can it be? Right, but if it's 40%, you can't not notice it. It's not possible.
Sweeteners are they created to give sweetness?
No, sweeteners are regular food. The sugar is a sweetener. It's not a legal timer. No, of course not a legal timer.
And you're right, the evidence on the shit is that the juices of kidneys is not a problem?
No, we're way off topic. Okay, let's get back to where we're supposed to be. Okay, so those are the simpler things. If the bittul happened before Pesach, either you did it before Pesach or somehow happened with your cake, it happened the way it was made, and then we had kidneys. Okay, those are the two simpler ways that we don't have to worry about chametz and masha. Okay. I forgot to show you something. Okay. That's a fun slide. I'm sorry. I forgot to show you this. Okay. we're going to find out. I meant to show these a few slides here. I meant to show this. Okay, in all the cases that we have, okay, I didn't put numbers on here because my numbers are not exact. So this is rough numbers. Okay, we're going to talk about 4 different reasons why, if you add the food by mistake, this is when foods that need hashgacha for Pesach. If you eat in 4 different groups, okay, the food will be mutter. Okay, what those are, we'll find out. That's a mystery. Okay, in this group. Okay, in roughly a quarter of the cases, okay, it's going to depend on the ingredients. Because I can't tell you whether if you added something in, you got to look at the ingredients. It could be that the ingredients have chametz or not. So those things are too up in the air. I can't say yes or no without knowing what's specifically the ingredients in your thing. How can I know what's in it until I know if it's specifically chametz? And the first groups were for sure fine. Fine. We're going to talk about why they're for sure fine. Okay, and then only in the very tiniest little group over here, in a very small percentage of the things that we tell you need hashgacha for Pesach, can you say, if that thing got mixed in on Pesach, then the food would be awesome. Okay, it's a very small number. Okay, so I meant to show you this. I'm sorry I didn't show you this before. Okay, anyhow, so that's the total of the way the pie chart looks for how bad things can be. Okay. So let's go on. Okay, so I'm sorry I forgot to show you these pretty slides. Okay, so why you look so perplexed? You're surprised. Okay, so now, the next thing's like this. Many of the foods, I don't know which color it is, okay, many of the foods that we tell people need hashgacha for Pesach, the reason why they need hashgacha for Pesach is because the food was made on kalim that were used for chametz. Okay, we're worried that this thing was made in the same kalim. Okay, so the example I'm going to use is, you buy marinara sauce, and that sauce has no chametz ingredients in it. Okay, it's just tomatoes and spices. Okay, that's all there is in there. Okay, just tomatoes and spices. The problem is that the same kalim that they cook that marinara sauce on, or that they fill the marinara sauces, they also do sauces that have noodles mixed into them. Okay, so we're concerned that the same kalim, there's heat involved, the same kalim we use for it. So therefore, don't use this one because yours may be free of ingredients that are chametz. There's nothing in it that would be problematic, but you don't know what else was made on those same kalim, and therefore we tell you get it with hashgacha for Pesach, which of course is what you should do. You get it with hashgacha for Pesach. Okay. So when we think about things that have problems with kalim, the first thing is like this: when things are made commercially, in most cases, that's done in a continuous process. Like in our case of marinara sauce, they fill it through the machines. It just keeps on going all day long. They're filling marinara sauce through the machinery to get into the bottles. So when you fill it in, when you fill it continuously, then the blias that are in those kli, there's only that much blia in the kli. If you measured up all the metals in the kli, imagine it was completely balua with chametz. All the metal in the kli is bottled in all the amount of marinara sauce that passed through here. I mean, how much, if you pass thousands of gallons through, it's going to be bottled mashishim. That bit will happen before Pesach. The marinara sauce that's in my pantry is sauce that was made before Pesach. The bittul that came out of those, the blias that came out of those kalim were bottled long before, when bittul mashishim still worked, before Pesach. Okay, so when the issue is kalim, in many, if not most cases, with the machinery that we're worried about is machinery that's used continuously. If it's used in the continuous flow, the product just flows through. Then it was bottled, because again, there's only this much metal. There's a lot of metal, but there's a huge amount of food, and so it's going to be bottled.
Well, it depends if it's from the first bottle.
I'm coming to that in a second. So I was talking about when it's in a continuous. When it's in a continuous. No, Tashmish B'Shaf is can I do it l'chatchila. I'm talking about is when we have 1,000 gallons poured through a kli, we don't say the first gallon has blia, the last gallon does not have blia. See, all the blia is bottled on all of that 1,000 gallons. Okay, so if there's enough blia to make 200 gallons straight, then there's not enough. Then it's bottled b'shishim. Okay, the blia is bottled. Now, 2 reasons why we're more comfortable with that than we might be year-round. Even year-round, that's pretty comfortable. But
you say that even if the 1,000 gallons are not in the machine at the same time?
Yes.
Why?
Not for today. Okay, so now, the next thing's like this. The rule is, there's no din of ch'ticha nasas nevela for chametz before Pesach. Okay? Why is that? The Pri Megadim says this. He says, the real issue of chanan is by basar b'chol. The issue, the rise of chanan is by basar b'chol. So he says the only things that have chanan are things that are doimel with basar b'chol. Now, we paskin that chametz is isura before Pesach. that even today, chametz is considered Yisur L'Inyan, whatever that has to do with Hakalos Kalim, has special din of why it's negated. He says, but even though we say chametz is Yisur Bala, chametz is considered Isur even before Pesach, he says, but Lamaisa, I could eat chametz today. Today I'm allowed to eat a cookie. If today I can eat chametz, it's not done with the basar b'cholav. The basar b'cholav is not usher today, is not allowed to be eaten today. So it is isura in technicalities. It's isura l'inyan hagalos kalim. But is it usher to eat it? No, it's not usher to eat. If it's not usher to eat, it's not doing the basar b'cholav. So there's no din of chanan for chametz before Pesach. Chametz before Pesach. Okay, so what does that mean? If there's no chanan for chametz before Pesach, that means like this. In this pot, okay, imagine this is a big pot in a company, okay, in a really big pot. Okay, in this pot we cooked tomato sauce that had pasta mixed into it. Okay, and in that sauce that they cooked up, it was 10% pasta was in there. That means the pot is not 100% chametzik. We don't say chanan, so the pot is only 10% chametzik, which means that if I want to be mevatel the blias in that pot into the later food that I make into there, it only has to be mevatel 6 times. Okay, I don't have to be mevatel against all the blias in the pot. I only have to be mevatel the chametz that's in the pot. If there would be chanan, I would say I have to be mevatel all the blias in the pot, because the pot is completely blue with chametz. But since I know that the recipe in this, in my made-up case here, the recipe is only 10% chametz, so the bli in the pot is only 10% chametz, so all I have to be mevatel before Pesach was the 10% I need 6 times. That means that I, on Pesach, who poured that marinara sauce into my food, I'm taking food that the bittul happened. First, I told you the bittul would happen because the kalim have more than enough to be mevatel b'shishin. But I'm saying it's even more stronger than that because since there's no chanan, the only problem would be is if I did something in here that was pure chametz. Once I use something that's only partially chametz, which is most foods are not pure chametz. Food's only partially chametz. The bittul is even easier to make that bittul again. What we're taking advantage of is the fact that the bittul happened before Pesach. The commercially prepared food that I buy, I'm not talking about I took food out of my freezer by mistake. I'm talking not that I made it. That I made it on Pesach. The shaila happened before Pesach.
Well, unless the company cooked the pasta by itself.
Right. Okay. So we're coming to if they cook pasta. No, what I mean is if they cook pasta by itself, I have to have cooked something that I want to use on Pesach in that same kli. It doesn't. If they cook the pasta by itself, the pasta's chametz. But I'm not eating pasta. I'm eating something that was made on that kli.
Yeah. So that can was 100%.
Right. So the next case is what happens if they made something that was pure chametz. Okay. So the example that what he wants to say is. I haven't worked out all the details on this, so I'm going to a little bit pretend. But the case is, we tell people that frozen vegetables need hashgacha for Pesach because we're concerned that they're blanched on the same kalim as pasta. Okay? Blanched means a small cooking process done to release gases and make vegetables that they last better in the freezer. Okay? So they take vegetables, they dunk them into boiling water for a couple of minutes, and then they send them on their way. Okay? So the question is, the thought is, maybe that same machine that's used to cook the vegetables was also, to blanch the vegetables, was also used to cook pasta in it beforehand. Now, if you cook pasta in it beforehand, it would be 100% bli of chametz. That was the case you wanted to say.
Except there's water.
So, okay, we're going to ignore the water. I don't think we should ignore the water. Okay, so in that case, we have to remember that there's also, this is what you were hinting at beforehand, which is the rule of, this is called the parish. Here's a blancher, okay? And we blanch pasta in this machine, okay? So let's pretend, okay, we're making up a number, okay, that there's 20 cubic inches of metal in that blancher, okay? So how much blia? We have 20 inches worth of blia that we have to be mevatel of chametz, okay? And in every batch of vegetables of potatoes that we're going to cook in here afterwards, we're making up that there's 800 cubic inches. Okay, so it's not bottled. It's only 40 times. It's not bottled. Okay? Now, what I said to you at the beginning was, in most cases it is bottled. But let's say in this case it was not bottled. It was only 40 times. Okay? But that means there's only enough blias around in that kli. There's only enough blias to make 1.5 batches of potatoes treif, chametz stick. Because there's only 20 cubic inches worth of blias. There's only that much metal. So it's enough to be able to, in 1.5 times, to give time to 1.5 of them. But that means that if they make 3 batches of potatoes, okay, if they make 3 batches of potatoes, or 3 batches and more potato, then I have a potato in front of me. My potato is called the parish. Okay, my potato, there are treif potatoes, there are chametzik potatoes out there, there are not chametzik potatoes out there. Which one do I have? Okay, I have the potato that's called the parish. So this will all happen before Pesach. I have my potato that's in front of me is called the parish. So the potato that I have, Again, we have bittul. Okay, different variation of bittul.
If you have a treif pot and you cook chicken soup in there 3 times, there's only enough glaze for 1.5. So the third, it's not.
So two things. First of all, there's chanan. In regular there's no chanan. Okay. Without chanan, yes, but that if there would be no problems of chanan. So then, if I cook 3 times in it, so now I don't know which one.
They're all usher.
No, I don't. No, I don't know which one has isser in it. So I can't eat any of them because any of them might be the one that has the bleed that's usher in it. Okay. But when I cook enough times in it, and now when I pull and I say maybe this is the bleed, maybe this one that had the bleed, maybe it's not. And I have called the parish. And I say, it's the one that I'm holding in my hand, maybe it's the one that came from the tray for the not kosher. I don't know which one is which. Let's say I did 5 times. 1 is treif, and 4 are kosher. I don't know which one is which. So, if you may have shilas of kavod, where did the shilah come up with? But for me, the person who gets it from a called the parish version of it, I'm in the store and I buy it, I say, did I get the kosher one or the treif one? I get the kosher one. I say, called the parish. There's 1 treif one out there, there are 4 kosher ones out there. Which one did I get? I got the kosher one.
What are you doing here with the Yavish B'Yavish part of it?
The Yavish B'Yavish, that what?
Call the parish. It's like it's Batul Baroi, but it's still Yavish B'Yavish.
That doesn't work for this kind of a case. Okay? The reason why it doesn't work is because you only say Yavish B'Yavish when they're literally mixed together, because it doesn't work because of. I know the Rama makes it sound like it works because of chayzer veneer. It's not a formal chayzer veneer. What it is I still have the taruvas in front of me. So when the taruvas is in front of me, I say the isser is in there and the heter is next to it, and it's not batal on Pesach. On Pesach, it's not to be batal. That's when I have the taruvas in front of me. When I'm in a situation of kol the parish, then I'm okay. It's not, I don't have the taruvas in front of me. I'm in a kol the parish situation. I'm okay.
If you know what's happening and you keep on being mevatel, isn't like mevatel is a chila? Like you keep on cooking. Well,
I'm not saying you should do this. I'm saying I'm at home. Our situation is I use something that I was supposed to have a shulchan place that I use it. Right? I use it. I'm not saying that you should. I'm not recommending you do this to give a shulchan. So we do this on purpose. I'm talking about it that happened. Okay. Now, last thing we need to talk about. I hope maybe we'll have time for one other. But last thing to talk about is like this. All the things we talked about here so far were things where the thing itself wasn't the question of chametz. Okay? Everything I've told you so far, the thing itself wasn't a question of chametz. It was questions, things were mixed into it. We have questions that it was made on kalim that were chametz thick and things like that. Okay, what happens if we have something where the thing itself might be chametz? Okay, an example we're going to use is we have vinegar. Okay, you can make vinegar from corn, you can make it from wheat. The thing itself is the thing that might be chametz. It's not that something like was mixed into it or kalim. The thing itself might be chametz. So, like this. Let's look at a machaber. Okay, Siman Taf Samach Zayin. It's a long simon. Parts of it are the Krakow Pesach guide. Okay, all kinds of this you can eat for Pesach, this you can eat for Pesach, there's nish hashgacha for Pesach, all kinds of things like that. Okay, your local Krakow Pesach guide. Because Rama, a lot of things in the Rama. Okay, the Mechaber has things also in there, but it's their Pesach guide. So it's also lots of complicated dinim here. Here's what the Mechaber says. Okay, what happens like this? You had this was for them. A very serious shiloh. This used to happen. We don't deal with grains in our houses, but they had a food was cooked, and after they cooked the food, they realized that there was grains sitting inside the food. Okay, so the shiloh was whether those grains are chametz or they're not chametz. Okay, so the din is like this. So he says if you find in it, if they're in this baku, okay, the grains are cracked in a way that makes it obvious that these things are chametz, then the food is also. Why? Chametz is also b'mashu. So there's grain that's in there. It's sitting and cooking with your soup, and there's this grain in there, so it doesn't help to take the grain out because it was already gave time into the food. Either it's just one grain of barley or wheat in there. Doesn't make a difference. Chametz is also b'mashu, and the food is also. It's good on Pesach. Yeah, the person Kashrus bashal. You cook the food. Of course on Pesach. Of course on Pesach. Yeah, it means on Pesach. I'm sorry. Of course it means on Pesach. Taf Samach Zayin is well into Pesach. So no, really, it's talking about food. You made it on Pesach, so you made the food on Pesach, and you found, and there's a grain sitting in your food, so you finished. Okay, so you can't eat the food. Okay, now, right? The Emloinus Baku. Now, Emloinus Baku, the Mechaber. If you just read the Shulchan Aruch, you would not know all the details. Emloinus Baku mamish means when cases like this, there's a machlokes in the Gemara about a certain level of cracked. Okay, it's not important for us to know what it is. It's a certain level. It's not clear whether it is or is not cracked. Okay, the machlokes in the Gemara whether that thing is chametz or is not chametz. Okay, that's the machlokes in the Gemara. So the Mechaber says at the end, and it really was a few halachos before, and also that oisim chitas are uncertain or something. it's a machlokes in the Gemara, so the Rif says, since it's a machlokes in the Gemara, we don't know what the din is about this kind of level of being cracked. Okay, we don't know about this funny level in the middle here. So the Rif says this safek drais l'chumra. You can't eat it. You can't eat the grains because there's machlokes in the Gemara. We don't know how. Some we try to paskin a certain way, but the Rif says I don't know which way to paskin. Safek drais l'chumra. You can't eat the grains. He says, but what about if that grain is in your food? So you have to get rid of the grains. Okay, that's fine. He says, but the grain in the food, of course, is balta b'shishim. 1 or 2 grains in a pot of soup, of course it's going to be balta b'shishim. He says, well, chametz asa b'mashu is only the Rabbanan. Since chametz asa b'mashu is only the Rabbanan, there I say safek Rabbanan l'kula. So that's why when loinus baku mamish, the Rif, and this is the Machabas paskin. When loinus baku mamish, if it's not mamish, that means that's the case in the Gemara. He's referring to a case in the Gemara that doesn't machlokes about that case. For us, it's not important what it is. It's a case where it's a suffix in the Gemara, with the machlokes in the Gemara. Tavshel mutter. The tavshel is mutter because is safek Rabbanan l'kula. That's on the shiloh of mash is on it's a shiloh of Rabbanan. Safek Rabbanan l'kula, and you can eat the tavshel. So take out the grains and get rid of them because they're safek drais l'chumra. You have to get rid of those. But the food, you can eat the food. That's okay. Okay. So what did we hear before I fill you in that missing middle line over there? Okay, you probably noticed there's a missing line over there. Is what is that the Rif says the Mechaber is paskening that if we have a shiloh of a mashru on Pesach. We have a suffix mashru Pesach. The din is that's mutter. Okay? I have a thing. I don't know whether the thing is chametz or it's not chametz. Right? It's a machlokes in the Gemara. I don't know if it's chametz or not. The Rif says is, and now it's thrown to food in a way that would be asur b'mashru. The din is suffix mashru is mutter. Okay, which would say to us, what would that say to us? That means is if I took this vinegar and I use it in my food in a way that it would be only asur b'mashru, and I use a small amount of it in my food that could potentially be bottled, then I could say is suffix mashru would be mutter. Okay, that's what I would say so far. Now.
Well, even if it's a something which you could find out.
So the Ramah says Haggah. The ain't indicate. No. The Mechaber says it's mutter ain't indicate not true. El oisin hakol b'mashu afil loinus baku. Even if it's this kind of a case where it's loinus baku mamish, the Ramah says the meaning is that it's asur. Okay. So why did the Ramah say that it's asur? Is the Ramah saying it's asur because so. You tell me. The simple thing you would say, especially the way I introduced it to you, is that you'd say is that the Ramah saying is safek mashu is going to be asur. That would be the simple reading. And in fact, if you look at the Beis Yosef, this is the Ramah is passing like this sheet. The Kasam Mordechai, yesh yirtz lahachmir lesser tashuzem nesh yesh lo matirin. Okay, he wants to say it's asur because it's davar sheyesh lo matirin. That is to say is we should over here. There are Rishonim who hold that all of chametz is a davar sheyesh lo matirin. Okay, well, I told you before that chametz even on Erev Pesach is bottled all the way up to Pesach. That's because we pass the chametz is not a davar sheyesh lo matirin. Some Rishonim hold that chametz is a davar sheyesh lo matirin and it's not bottled in the afternoon of Pesach, on Erev Pesach in the afternoon. But so he's saying is we would be mitzaref those who hold that maybe here's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. Okay, we don't have time, but there's the reason why he might be mitzaref it has to do with the Kiveger. Okay, we'll leave that for now. So maybe you should consider this a davar sheyesh lo matirin, but then comes the Sefer HaMitzvos, the yesh lahachmir. Okay, somebody else, it's a question who this Sefer HaMitzvos is, that's on the bottom of my tour, it says, they're not too sure who that means. Somebody says, the yesh lahachmir, so I'm going to be cautious and say you should be machmir for this shita. So the ikra din is probably mutter, but I want to mishum mibnei haminig. I want to be machmir. Okay, so when the Ramah said, what did the Ramah say? The Ramah said, "Ve'ein haminig el oisun hakol b'mashu." So if you're reading the Beis Yosef, you tell me the reason is because in this case we don't treat it, even though it's a suffix mashu, since there's a tzad also that chametz should be davar sheyesh lo matirin. Therefore, we're going to be machmir and say it can't be bottled.
Are there other cases in Shulchan Aruch considered davar sheyesh lo matirin?
Yes, sometimes we mitzaref it. Sometimes the tzad to not say davar sheyesh lo matirin. It's a good question. Why isn't davar sheyesh lo matirin? Like you have to pay that. The reason to say not like that, that's a figure from before. Sometimes we include that. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it's just a tziruf. So he didn't say that's because I'm being mitzaref that. He said sheyesh lo matirin. We don't pass in chametz sheyesh lo matirin. The Mordechai himself, it's two before and the two afterwards, is the one who says we don't say chametz is davar sheyesh lo matirin. It's right in that same. It's on the same page in the Mordechai. But he means to say is we're being mitzaref those who hold that yesh lo matirin to say this. It's not the Mordechai doesn't hold chametz yesh lo matirin. It's two before or after that the Mordechai says himself. He's the one who says chametz is not davar sheyesh lo matirin. Okay.
Why do I say we make mishum simuzot? If this is the sheet of the
It's a good question. It's a good question. See, why wouldn't he say?
It is the
It is. That's where it's coming from. That's the only person to say that. So he should have said you could be making up the muckle. Okay, that's a fair question. I don't know. Now, but the truth is, if you look, the Bach and the Pri Chadash and the Pri Megadim all say no. It's not because we should be machmer about chametz about mashahu. It's not because davar should be no. That's not the pshat. They say the reason why there must be machmer is because. The most machmas is because like this. The Gemara has a shaila about this grain that's cracked a certain amount. So the Ramah says, if we look at the grain and we say, we're not sure if it's the kind that's cracked that's chametzik or it's not chametzik. He says, do you know why? Because we don't even know if we're in the shaila of the Gemara. It might be so cracked that everyone in the Gemara would have said that this is usher. Maybe we're have such a lack of bekiyas. We so don't understand what makes them look chametzik that we might be looking at the thing that the Chachmei Gemara would have said, for sure it's usher. So we don't even know if we're even in the shaila in the first place. We're in a situation where it could be that it was completely nisbaku. Remember the beginning of the Machaber said if it was nisbaku, it's usher, because that's for sure chametz. Well, maybe that's what it is. Maybe we're just totally missing the boat. We think it's a shaila of nisbaku. It's not a shaila. It's partial that it's usher. And therefore, the reason why we're being machmir is not because the etzem, if it would be safek davisheshel material, if it would be safek mashu, it would be mekel, but it might not even be a safek. Okay? The way the Pri Megadim explains it is, he says, if we could treat this not as a safek, he says we treat this as a safek chesaron yediyah. It's a safek that we don't even realize, that we don't know that this might be nisbaku, and if it's safek chesaron yediyah, it doesn't count as a safek altogether. So it's not safek mashu, it's just, you just don't know what you're talking about. So you can't say, everything is a safek and it could be mutter. Okay, now, where did that come from? They're all the Achronim say that that's a pshat in what the Ramah says, even though if you look down over here too, and the reason is because, I would think, is because if you look at the Mordechai, this is what the Mordechai really says. Okay? Look what the Mordechai really says. He says that part. For Raya Misafik Muchan, the Asim Drabanan, Vasir Bergen Tzadin, which is, there's a tzad to say that even by a Drabanan, which is over here we're talking about a Mashu, even by Drabanan you should say David Sheshel Matirin. Okay, he brings a Raya to that. So the Beis Yosef skipped that part. V'chein Kasab Sefer HaMitzvos. Okay, so he didn't bother bringing the Raya. Kivan the ain't anu b'kiyim ma nikr roy lehispakeh. Okay, we don't even know ourselves what's considered partially opened up in a way that should be for sure usher. So what everyone else is saying the Ramah holds, which again didn't say it in the Beis Yosef that way, is because they don't bring the Mordechai, but they all say that's the reason. Okay, so which surprised me. So I went to look at the Mordechai, because the Mordechai actually says that the reason is because it's a lack of bekiyas on our part to know that maybe this thing is completely nisbakeh.
Are there words after the Yesh LaHachmer and the Kivin?
Again?
Are there missing words?
On which side? The Mordechai side or the Beis Yosef?
Mordechai.
No, that's the
Kivin, the Ein Anu
Kivin. Yeah, the Yesh LaHachmer because we're not baki.
Maybe they're referring to the first sheet. We don't know pshat of the Yesh right? So maybe that Kivin is only pshat in the Sefer HaMitzvos.
Yeah, I don't care who's pshat whatever.
No, so they were quoting the first sheet of the Yesh.
Whose day is quoting?
Not quoting him.
Who say no? That's what I'm saying. The later thing ain't on the Bekiim. They say the pshat is ain't on the Bekiim. They say the pshat Ramah ain't on the Bekiim. Okay, the Beis Yosef didn't say that line. That ain't on the Bekiim is not in the Beis Yosef. Okay.
That one line. I'm just asking. Does it say in Sefer HaMitzvos the Yesh LaHachmer Kivin?
Yes.
Yeah, I just broke it up like this so you should see the context of what's going on. It's one paragraph, but to show you the context of what's going on, I broke it up like this. So you can just see that what the Beis Yosef is coming from and which words he skipped. For whatever reason. The Beis Yosef maybe skipped it because he wasn't passing like that anyhow. Okay? But the Ramah, I wouldn't have said this. But all the Achronim say that's what Pshat Ramah is. That the Ramah Be'etzim agrees to this idea that Safek David Sheshel Matirin, not David Sheshel, Safek Mashu would be mutter, but here it has to do with a rule about something that's Safek Chesaron Yediyah. Okay? Now, we're over time, so I'm skipping a little bit. Now, it happens to be, if that would be true, even if you say the reason is because of Safek Chesaron Yediyah, then I would say then you would think that I should say is, well, I have this vinegar that I poured into my food on Pesach, okay? I don't know if it's chametz or it's not chametz, so I would say it's a safek chesaron yediyah. I would say then, why don't you go back? Somebody knows whether this vinegar is chametz or kidneys. Somebody knows. If you go back to the manufacturer, there's somebody there who knows that. So maybe Maybe we should say this is also Safek Chesar Yediyah, in which case the Rama says when it's a Safek Chesar Yediyah, the person is not allowed to say it's just a Safek Isser Mashu. If Safek Isser Mashu, then if the Rama says, in that case, don't say Safek Mashu is mutter, because it's Safek Chesar Yediyah. So, the reason why I don't think it's correct, I'm not 100%, but the reason why I don't think that's correct, that in logic that's correct, but I don't think it's correct over here is because like this. Over here, when the vinegar fell into the food on Pesach. Well, let's go back. Before the vinegar fell into the food on Pesach, okay? On Erev Pesach, I went to the rabbi and I said, Rabbi, am I allowed to own this vinegar on Pesach? What was the answer to the shayla? Is this vinegar chametzik or is it kidneys? What is the din about that vinegar that I want to eat, that I want to keep it on Pesach? Don't talk about eating it yet. I want to keep that vinegar on Pesach. The answer to that shayla was what we said before. The answer is called the parish. Okay? We don't know which one it is. We don't know what it is. And on that, we're going to say also called the parish. We're going to say is, in the United States, lucky for us, in the United States, most of these things are kidneys. Most of these things are made from kidneys. I have no way of knowing if I was Efshel V'Ruri B'Kal, maybe I should be Mevarit, maybe I could call Pashgacha, maybe I'll know the answer. But unless it's a case of Efshel V'Ruri B'Kal, I'm going to say called the parish, that my vinegar is not chametzik. I'm going to have decided already, so to speak, that my vinegar is not chametzik. I'm allowed to keep that vinegar on Pesach. So, when that vinegar gets mixed in, it's not, oh no, we have a Safek Chesar Yediyah, and now it's not considered a Safek Mashu. It is not a Safek at all. I know the answer to my case. Okay? And even more so in the case of spices I told you beforehand, which was that the spices, that there may be breadcrumbs in there it's better. Because in that case, there isn't even a Safek Chesar Yediyah at all. Okay? There's nobody who knows, now it's a machlokes nachanim, whether a Safek for everybody is considered a Safek Chesar Yediyah. There's nobody who has any idea whether there are breadcrumbs mixed into my spices or not. Okay? It's not the vinegar. The vinegar, at least somebody knows. There's a factory full of people who know whether it's chametz or kidneys. There's lots of people who know that. In the spices, there isn't anybody who has a clue whether there's spices in there. That's easier to say that's a Safek Mashu. But even in the case of the vinegar, also, unless it's Efshel V'Ruri B'Kal, then the person's holding by Safek Chesar Yediyah. Let's